Maya hadn't intended to spend her one day off working. She had been looking forward to a few quiet hours to breathe, maybe even apply to a few jobs. But when her younger sister called that morning, her voice hoarse and weak from a stubborn cold, Maya didn't think twice. She slipped on her sneakers, pulled her hair into a bun, and headed straight to the café. The moment she walked in, the familiar scent of espresso and fresh pastries wrapped around her like a blanket. The little café had always been her sister's escape, a warm, bustling place tucked into a quiet town, but today, it was Maya's responsibility. She tied the apron around her waist and greeted the first customers with a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. Her mind wasn't entirely in the café. It kept drifting to the job she had lost just 2 weeks earlier, her third one this year. She could still feel the sting of that final paycheck, barely enough to cover groceries. The eviction notice in her purse weighed heavier than the coffee pots she carried, and her sister's medications, growing more expensive by the month, gnawed at her every thought. Still, she smiled. She poured lattes, cleared plates, and scribbled orders, not for tips, but because giving up wasn't an option. Her sister needed her. Life hadn't been fair lately, but Maya wasn't asking for fair. She just needed a break, any sign that things might someday get better. By mid-morning, the café had settled into a gentle rhythm. The rush had passed, and a calm hush fell over the room. That's when Maya noticed him, table 3. An older man, maybe in his late 60s, sat alone by the window. He wore a navy coat, his silver hair neatly combed, and his hands wrapped around a simple black coffee. He hadn't ordered anything else, nor had he spoken much, but there was something about the way he watched the room, quiet, observant, kind. Maya approached with her usual polite smile and asked if he needed anything else. He shook his head, thanked her softly, and returned to watching the street outside. There was no judgment in his eyes, only warmth, the kind that made her feel unexpectedly comforted. She continued her shift, juggling orders and wiping down tables, yet her gaze kept drifting back to him. At one point, while refilling water for the next table, Maya accidentally knocked over a glass. It shattered, and water spilled across the floor. She apologized quickly and bent to clean it, cheeks burning. Before she could grab a towel, the man from table 3 was beside her, helping her gather the pieces. "You're doing just fine," he said with a gentle smile. When he left a few minutes later, Maya found a folded napkin under the coffee cup. It held a generous tip, and a handwritten note that stopped her in her tracks. "You're doing more than you know. Keep going." She stared at the words, her eyes suddenly wet. Later that afternoon, after the last of the lunch crowd had gone and the café had grown quiet again, Maya slipped into the small kitchen in the back. She finally had a moment to breathe, but the emotions she'd been pushing down all day came rushing in like a wave. She leaned against the counter, pulled the napkin from her apron pocket, and read the note again. "You're doing more than you know. Keep going." The words were simple, yet they cracked something open inside her. Maybe it was the exhaustion from working non-stop. Maybe it was the stress of unpaid bills, or the way her sister's health had been hanging over her like a cloud. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in weeks, someone saw her, not just the girl taking orders, but the woman silently struggling to hold everything together. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the napkin again. She wasn't used to kindness like that, unexpected and unearned. And it wasn't about the money he left. It was the feeling his words gave her, like a hand reaching out in the dark. Maya sank onto a crate in the corner of the kitchen, tears finally spilling over. She cried not because she was weak, but because someone reminded her she was still standing. That one small gesture from a stranger had pierced through the heaviness she carried. And for the first time in a while, she felt just a little less alone. The next morning, Maya returned to the café, not because she had to, but because something inside her hoped that the man from table 3 might come back. And he did. Right on time, he settled into the same seat by the window, nodding warmly when he saw her. Maya hesitated for a moment before walking over, heart pounding just a little faster. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly, setting down his coffee. "For yesterday. The note, it meant more than you know." The man looked at her kindly, then gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit with me for a moment, if you can." Maya sat. What began as small talk quickly turned into something deeper. He introduced himself as Richard, a retired CEO who had once run a successful nonprofit organization. But what he shared next made Maya's breath catch. He had lost his daughter 5 years ago to a rare illness. She had been young, full of life, and determined to make a difference in the world. "You remind me of her," he said softly. "Strong. Selfless. Even when life is hard." Maya blinked back tears. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Richard then handed her a card. "I still run a foundation in her name. We support people with big hearts and hard stories. There's a position open, helping us reach more families like yours. If you're interested, I'd love to have you." It wasn't just a job offer. It was a lifeline, and a moment of grace she never expected. A few weeks later, the cafe felt like a distant memory. Maya now stood on a small stage at a community center, dressed neatly, her voice calm but filled with purpose as she welcomed guests to a local charity event hosted by Richard's Foundation. The room was buzzing with people, families, volunteers, supporters, and among them, right in the front row, sat her sister, smiling proudly, healthier and stronger with each passing day. Maya had embraced her new role with a kind of passion she didn't know she had. Each day at the foundation reminded her that her struggles weren't in vain. She was now helping others who were once in her shoes, single mothers, sick children, families fighting quiet battles. Every email she answered, every family she met, every story she listened to felt like a step toward something greater. As she wrapped up her speech, Maya glanced at Richard standing off stage, watching her like a proud father. She smiled through glassy eyes, thinking back to that morning at the cafe, her sister sick, her heart heavy, her hope fading. One man. One note. One unexpected moment had changed everything. She closed her speech with a soft but steady voice. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness have the power to change a life. Mine did. And I hope, in some way, today, we can be that moment for someone else. The room filled with applause. But more than that, it filled with hope. Maya had found her purpose, because someone believed in her when she needed it most.